Hello and welcome to our webinar. Before we start, I would like to thank all those who made their comments, and I hope that this time we will have more subscribers to the webinar, and that they will be able to interact in our discussion. Again, this is a recorded webinar because, as I already mentioned in the first webinar, that we still don't have the functionalities of having a live webinar due to the fact that the system is, we are paying for the system. It's a little bit expensive. It is at about 20, no, not 20, but about 15,000, I think, to have a 1-year subscription to a system that will allow us to broadcast our webinars live in a manner that is convenient. So what we have here actually is just merely a recorded webinar, and I hope that you can bear with it. So if you have questions, just type in your questions in the comment section and you may send it to me, and I hope to answer you when the broadcast is over, for example, or if I may be able to see it, I will be able to answer you on the next video. So that's the two ways by which I can answer to your questions and queries. First, by chat, as you just type in your questions or queries, and then I'll chat with you. And then we can have also a kind of answers to the questions through a video next time. Maybe I'll gather all questions and then have one video that would summarize all the questions and give you the answers, as depending on the way this webinar feature will be able to get across the audience that I am intending with, particularly you who are subscribers to the Center for Biblical Literacy, or cbleonline.org, which is our movement, our hopefully later on a movement that will help us feed the world with the Word of God. So last time I talked about the thought leaders and the social influencers, those who are influencing us through their social media or sometimes through their advocacies and ideologies. And I already mentioned last time that there's no such thing as a neutral or unbiased way of looking at things, because everything is an interpretation. Even this things that I'm saying is an interpretation according to my thoughts and according to those other people that I listen to. So everything is an interpretation. Because everything is an interpretation, it doesn't mean that there is no longer sense of right or wrong. But this would only make sense for those who are people of faith. For those people who have no more faith, then it's a different story. Because I come from a religious background, and I always see things from a religious perspective. Now, does it make me a saint? Of course not. I am a sinner, and I still have things to work on with my own life. It doesn't mean that I am already perfected being, that I can tell you what to do. I'm not telling you what to do, but rather I'm, in one way or the other, I'm telling you how to think according to the teachings of the church and according to the ideas of people who shares the same principles, the same background that I have. So for example, as I already mentioned here, the 1 plus 1 is always equals to 2. And there may be people who saying, oh, no, it's not 2 because I feel it is 3. So we know what is objectively true and what is not. So I belong to that school of thought that claims that 1 plus 1 is equals to 2, regardless of your feelings. So, but there are also people who will say, not really. I feel that 1 plus 1 is equals to 3 or 4. But that's just guessing, and we know what is true, what is not true. So whoever tells the best story wins. And that is a challenge for us Catholics, and I think the majority of my audience here in this webinar and in this Center for Biblical Literacy and Education website are Catholics. If you're not Catholics, I don't intend to discriminate you. I don't intend to hurt your feelings, but this is taken from a Catholic perspective, and I hope you take it also accordingly, because this is the interpretation that I have as a Catholic, Filipino Catholic, to be more precise. Okay, so if indeed the one who tells the best story wins, then we Catholics would also need to tell our stories. I am convinced that the thought leaders are not merely describing the world. They're actually painting a portrait of the world according to what they think the world is, as they believe the world should be. Now, many of these are liberal leftist in the American sense, in the American context. Or in our Filipino context, we can call this maybe the progressives, the socially liberals, or progressives. So, the point that I'm trying to say is each one of us have their own worldview, have their own way of looking at things, have their own way of thinking how the world should be. But some of us, or many of us, stop there. We have our own worldview. Sometimes we are so convinced of it, sometimes we are not so convinced of it, but we stop there. That's the end of the story. But not for those who are driven, ideologically driven, because they would really pursue an end. They are not just merely consumers of content, they are creators of content. And the trend now is legislation. They're not just merely trying to create laws that would favor the entire population, the entire society, but sometimes they would propose laws that will be beneficial to their particular sector or group only. We Filipinos have this tendency that as long as it doesn't affect us, we don't really care about it. As long as your tail is not stepped on, you will not bark or you will not bite. So just leave it. Leave each other alone. Don't mind. But if it affects us directly, then sometimes we just bear it, because that is the Filipino way of doing things. No? You just endure it. And until the time that a particular critical mass is achieved, and then the people will ask for change. But we Filipinos are very passive in some sense. If not really very passive, but to a certain extent, the majority of us are passive. But how about those minority that are not passive? The minority that are critical, the minority that are loud, the minority who wants to do something. They would really go beyond the extra mile to pursue their agenda and make it real. How about us? We just keep our mouth shut, and then that's it for us. We allow the minority to change the way we think, to change the way we act, and the way we even feel, because we are just no longer discerning and critical at all. So, my dear friends, Catholics need to tell our own stories. We need to tell our own beliefs and stand on our principles and beliefs. You know, I was watching on YouTube, I think a year ago or more than a year ago, of a launching of a journal of a prestigious university here in the Philippines, one of the prestigious universities. It was about the journal on sociology, more or less, in that field. In that particular forum, there was a presentation made by a priest theologian whose brilliant arguments were peppered with jargons that only specialists in the field would easily understand. I was trying to follow the discussion as much as I can and forcing myself to digest whatever he is saying. But then, of course, towards the end of the presentation, I was looking for a big bang. I was looking for a clencher that would change my mind or whatever. So, after that long, boring presentation, he concluded this. And the conclusion was very frustrating. The conclusion is that the bishops of the Philippines should refrain from an uncritical account of Christianity's history in the Philippines or function solely on a deductive pastoral logic. Wow, big words. But what is he saying? Is there something new here? No. There's nothing new here. It's just a repetition of a leftist ideology. Why? Why did they say so? Because the proposal of that priest theologian is that the Bishops' Conference, throughout the years of its existence as a conference, has published several documents that portrayed the Philippines as a Catholic nation. I remember a song, Filipinas, a pueblo amante de Maria, a people in love with Mary, or a country in love with Mary. So that's one of the narratives that are playing, or rather being proposed by the Catholic culture here in the Philippines. And one of the things that we are really claiming is that the Philippines is a Catholic nation. A Catholic nation. Well, precisely because we are in the majority. Cultural, even if we are just merely cultural Catholics, we are in the majority. So, the narrative of the Catholic Bishops' Conference is that this makes it, based on the documents that this theologian reviewed and surveyed, is that it is claiming that the Philippines is a Catholic nation, among many other reasons. But the brilliant theologian claimed that no, we should pause and think again whenever we claim the Philippines as a Catholic nation based on demographics and social dominance of the Catholic religion in the Philippines. In other words, for him, it is not enough to claim that the Philippines is a Catholic nation on the account of an overwhelming number of Filipinos who consider themselves as Catholics or who identify themselves as Catholics. Well, seems to be very good, a very objective way of looking at things. But is it? Is it objective? Of course not, because this theologian is also proposing a different way of looking at things. Now, my question is, what is wrong if the Catholic hierarchy will construct its own imaginary, as they would use the term? They will construct their own imaginary that the Philippines is a Catholic nation. So what's wrong with that? Because that is how we are going to tell the story, and that is the story that we are going to propose. Whether it is relevant or not, it's immaterial. The point is, we have a story to tell, and we want to claim that because 85% of the Filipinos are baptized Catholics, then it is a Catholic country. That's the narrative that we want to pursue. If this priest theologian would also have their own sociological analysis, then that is his sociological analysis. Why should he stop us from telling our own story? And that is something that I would like really to emphasize. He wants us to stop to think twice when we call the Philippines as a Catholic nation. As if the bishops were wrong to think such. But the conference, the Episcopal Conference, is telling a story based on its own narratives. And its own agenda. In the same way that scholars and members of the academe can tell their own stories according to their own agenda. The problem in this is the most difficult one, the more difficult one, is that if those who are in the hierarchy will also claim the same thing as this priest theologian is telling. Sometimes there are just narratives that are being played out in society, and sometimes we just echo it. Sometimes we even hear that from the preachings of the priest or sometimes bishops, echoing what these ideologically driven professors or members of the academe are actually proposing. The question is, what is your proposal? What is our Catholic stand? So it would be sorry. Now it would be unfortunate if church leaders stop telling our story as a Catholic church and start telling stories according to the scripts of those who want their stories to dominate. Now, are we locked in a battle of who can tell the best story? Yes, the answer is yes. And let us not be naive or dishonest about it, because we are. I remember, practically, for example, here in Bacolod, for example, there are so-called non-confessionals, non-denominationals, non-sectarian groups of religious organizations or communities. There is one here, I don't want to mention the name for the sake of propriety, and I don't want to advertise them. There's one here, a very big group. I think this is, if not the most vibrant, at least one of the most, if not the most vibrant, thriving, non-denominational, non-confessional, non-sectarian, whatever the nuns they're talking about, group of Christians. Their narrative is this, always this. Oh, just come and join our service, our Sunday service. After all, it is just the same as yours. After all, we have the same God. Perfect. Perfect. And if you are naive yourself, you will go there. So, if your friend who is convinced that this is the community that gives her or him a sense of belonging in the community, oftentimes they would go and recruit others. And that is the usual narrative. They will go to a mediocre or a lukewarm Catholic and they would tell, oh, or maybe just a mere Sunday goer, Sunday going Catholic, and then they say, oh, you just come after the Mass, you join us for our prayer service, and after all, it is all the same. We have the same God, Jesus Christ, so there's nothing wrong. Well, it is so wrong. Why? Because we don't have the same God. Do we have the same God? No. That is preposterous. Because the God that you are telling is not the God that I am worshiping also. I'm telling in the church. The God of Catholics is not necessarily the same God as your God. Or and vice versa. Your God is not necessarily my God. And that is correct. Why? Because our understanding of who God is based on our own ideas and interpretations. Whether it is an idea or interpretation of your own pastors or your own priests, or that of your community, or that of your own church. Now in the Catholic, of course, we have the official teachers of the church, which are the bishops, and together with the Pope. That's the magisterium, magister, the teacher. That's the official teachers of the church. Now, how about these non-confessional, non-denominational, non-sectarian Christian groups? Well, they interpret the Bible, for example, and they look at and the way they look at God according to their own interpretations. So how can it be the same? It cannot be the same. Well, in the classic comparison, a Unitarian who believes in one God is different from a Trinitarian who believes in one God but with three divine persons. A Unitarian by the very mere word, is only one. They believe in only one God. They do not believe in the persons, in the divine persons. So for example, they believe that there is God, and Jesus is just a prophet, for example, or Jesus is just merely an adopted son of God. No? A human person who's overshadowed by the Spirit, and he became, well, more than human, but not God. That's the Unitarian way. But for us Trinitarian, those who believe in one God, but three divine persons, we believe that there is the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit are equal. And they are together. There's no difference between the persons. Although they also differentiate in some aspect of in the way they relate with one another. So the Father begot the Son, and the Father and the Son begot the Spirit, and these three are in a communion of love and shall we say, a continuous relationship within themselves. And out of that loving community of the Father, Son, and the Spirit, the world was created so that we will know, we will love and serve the Lord based on the very nature of an outpouring love, because God is love. But can you tell me now that your God is the same God as my God? Of course, no, you cannot do that. Precisely because the teachings are different. So the way we look at, the way we interpret things would change the way we see things, or vice versa. So the way we interpret the Bible colored and results to, as a consequence, to our idea of who God is as He reveals Himself in the Bible. Now, are you telling me now that the way the Church, the Catholic Church, and these non-denominational Christian communities interprets the Bible the same way? Of course not. So how can you say that after all is said and done, we have the same God? No, we don't have the same God. It's a different God that you are worshiping than the one that I worship when I go to Mass, for example. So it's not the same God. Okay, another narrative is, oh, religion cannot save you. Wow! Another narrative which seems to be, oh, totoo naman, di ba? No, it's our faith. Wrong again. Precisely, faith and your religion is in a way intertwined and mixed. That's why in the hierarchy of in the priorities or the categorizations of the interactions, we have here know, love, and serve God. We start here with the knowing, not with the loving. So it's very clear, it should be clear in your minds. We have to know God, we have to love God, and we have to serve God. You cannot love someone you do not know. Because if you don't know who or she is, or at least have a correct idea of who or she is, you cannot love the person. Because if that is a false persona that is being, that you are relating with, then you are not loving the person but the persona. You see the point? So for example, you have a suitor, and the suitor will do his best in taking care of you and showing the best foot forward, as they say, without showing the real thing. Now, for example, he is pala an alcoholic or a drug addict. But whenever he goes before you, he is like a puppy or a kitten, a sober person, a very gentleman. But behind you, because you are not living, for example, 24/7 together, but when he is not with you, he is an alcoholic or a drug addict or a maniac or whatever they is or she is. So is that real loving? No, that's deception. Because you are loving the persona, the one that is being presented to you, but you're not loving the person because he is hiding it. So that is why true love will only follow by knowing the person. So you know first the person before you can say you loved him. And this is the reason why before uh, long courtship is always suggested, that before we enter into a decision to marry, to get into marriage, you have to have a courtship. If it is a long courtship, the better. Why? Because it would time will eventually reveal who the person is. And then you can make a decision whether despite his flaws or her flaws, you still want to get married with the person. Because you cannot love something you do not know. So, religion cannot save you. It's faith. And that's a very Protestant way of looking at things. And if you are Catholic and you're subscribing to such an idea, then there is something wrong with your Catholic education and formation. Why? Because the saints are very clear that the truth is in the church. You cannot get it outside the church. There might be fragments of truth outside the church, but the fullness of truth is revealed by Jesus in the church that he founded. And that is the church, the universal church, which for us, the church that has an apostolic succession. For us Catholics who are, shall we say, who are under the guidance of the Bishop of Rome as Roman Catholics, then it is in the Roman Catholic Church. It subsists in the Roman Catholic Church, the church. But of course, I'm not saying only in the Roman Catholic Church, because there are also churches that have their apostolic succession. As long as you have the apostolic succession, it can be more or less an assurance that you are on the right track. Okay, so can religion save? In terms of religion as a set of principles, of course not. But in terms of a way of expression of our belief in that divine person, and then of course, yes, as the church father, I forgot his name, who said this, that outside the church there's no salvation. Outside the church there is no salvation. Why? Precisely because we believe that our faith is strengthened and made clarified by the teachings of the church. You know, people who are telling that religion is not a way to salvation, or religion cannot save you, is in a way actually just making a propaganda so that it can leave a window wherein they can proselytize. I think that's the one of the main reasons that they have, other than of course theological, but it has also a kind of benefit, a proselytizing benefit. Why? Because if they insist that the church, if they insist that the religion can save, then you will say, oh, why should I transfer to your religion when my religion is a Roman Catholic, for example, is already founded in 2,000 years of history. And yours is only like 100 years, 200 years. Mine is 2,000 years old. Now, which is better? And we can count among our members saints and great men and women who excel in virtues and faith and morals. So if I'm going to compare your church to my church, then there's a big difference. I can count among the members of the Catholic Church Augustine, for example, of Hippo, or Jerome, or Gregory the Great, or Santa Teresa of Calcutta, or those other saints, both ancient and modern, who excelled in their faith, both by their virtues and by their morality or morals. How about yours? You see? So, if we come to that argument, perde na sila. They will be now on the losing end. So, what they do, they eliminate the field of the line. They try to eliminate by saying, oh, don't bother with that. Don't bother with that field of discussion. No. After all, it's not faith, it's not religion that saves us, it's faith. Oh, you see? So what they did was to get out of a very difficult situation wherein they would be made to account for their foundations, for their church's foundation or community's foundation. And they know that it is really difficult to hold water, precisely because they are just very recent and they're new. But the Catholics old, ancient, 2,000 years of existence. And we can trace, well, there will be some historians or members of the academy who are listening who will be telling us, oh, it's only to the Middle Ages. But even if just merely that the Roman Catholics came into its present form in the medieval age, it's still okay because there are no other forms of religion who can claim farther than that. Only the Catholics. So, what you have now is a kind of a bind for the non-Catholics to justify their own faith. So, they come up with this narrative that, religion cannot save you, it's your faith. Well and good for you. But who will buy into that? Now, my dear friends, so I have given you examples of how narratives can change the way we think and the way we act and the way we feel. So, I hope that my webinars with you will help you to be more discerning, to be more, shall we say, conscious of the possible biases, conscious of the possible prejudices, of the ideologies that are being thrown to us, but sometimes we are not really aware of. So thank you again for your time listening to our webinars. I am really hoping that you will come to a decision that these sessions are helpful for your own well-being and spiritual growth. I hope that you will subscribe to the webinar sections as well as to the website of the Center for Biblical Literacy and Education. Let me know. Please let me know of your queries, of your questions, and I will answer that in the due time. And according to the methods that I already mentioned, either by chatting or by creating a video wherein I will try to answer all your questions in that particular session. I hope that this particular lesson, this particular webinar that we have will help you become a discerning person.